This is Track Talk. We're going to be going back to 1830 for this video, but it's 1830 with a twist. I don't think we've commented a game where they played with the variant where you can buy multiple brown shares from the IPO. So it'll be interesting to see if that's relevant in this game and what impact it has on the game. Just as a little historical note, this variant basically allows you to buy a company's shares as long as it's in brown from both the market and from the IPO within one stock action. The usual rule, or I guess the more common rule in 1886.games, is that you can only buy the brown market shares from a company. I'm not a huge fan of this variant. I think it makes the game kind of swingy. If, for instance, you have priority and someone ends up in the brown, you can snap up, easily 6 shares oftentimes, and that's just a huge advantage to have on the other players. In the more common variant where it's the market shares only, you're oftentimes limited to 3 or 2 shares from brown, which is still a huge deal, but it just makes it a lot less priority dependent. I think that from what I've read, Francis Tresham's intended way of playing was with the brown share rule limited to the market, but more recent publications have, allowed you to buy multiple brown shares from the IPO as well. So it's kind of whatever you decide at the start of the game the way you want to play. But my personal preference is not this variant, but we'll see if it leads to interesting development in this game in particular. Lots of skilled players in the game. Batsman, Leeson, Skolvadar have all been on the channel before. I don't think Obi-Wan has, and we'll see how his inaugural commentated game goes. He's going to lead us off in the auction, and we'll be bidding for the Champlain and St. Lawrence. I do not like the way he is starting this game. Champlain and St. Lawrence is not the best private and does open up for a pretty early ripcord if people are playing aggressively. Batsman, he is going to bid on the D and H. Leeson taking a bid on the CNA. CNA is great private, obviously, and if someone has kind of opened up the auction with a early bid on the cheap privates, you may be able to walk away with this for near face if the other players aren't very careful. Skolvadar, he's going to take the Mohawk and Hudson, so it would be a terrible idea for Obi-Wan to pull here, and I think he's going to be forced to bid on the D&H, or else Batsman will do it for him probably. Instead, he joins on the CNA, so I don't see a reason why Batsman wouldn't pull here. We'll see if he does that. He does. So again, this is all made possible by Obi-Wan, and it's the danger of doing what he's done. Batsman, so let's just analyze this for a second. Is it really as easy as a decision as I made it out to be for Batsman to pull here? By pulling, he'll have spent $95 and he'll have $20 of revenue. He will be allowing Obi-Wan to get the Champlain and St. Lawrence, and Skolvadar to get the Mohawk and Hudson, and then there's a contested Camden and Amboy. Leeson has no other privates, so he's going to be highly motivated to win this, and Obi-Wan should be able to price and force quite well, but has already spent $45, so it's not going to be able to bid it quite as high as Leeson safely. This means that probably Leeson will be having the most cash as we look at the B&O, or the most revenue as we look at the B&O, and Obi-Wan will have the least. So Obi-Wan may be forced to take the B&O here, which would give Batsman priority, which wouldn't be the end of the world for the table, because Batsman or Leeson could deny Skolvadar, Batsman would have to deny Leeson the PRR, basically. So if Batsman is not hoping to run the PRR, maybe he would be incentivized not to pull here, but that's really kind of like tertiary analysis. I don't know that that's a key deciding factor of whether you pull here or not. I think the cheap D&H is enough motivation to do it. Regardless, he decides to pull, and we'll see if Obi-Wan is able to price and force the CNA adequately. So we will see them go up to above 200 at least, and now heading north of 220. Leeson does end up with the CNA, and he's going to end up with it for only 235. It's not an unreasonable price for it, but it does leave him enough cash to float in stock round 1 if he's given the PRR. This means that Obi-Wan is going to be obligated to buy the B&O. So kind of as expected, based on the early bid on the Champlain and St. Lawrence. Skovidar probably passing here. Obi-Wan should be buying this and does. He pars it for max and will not be able to float anytime soon as a result. Batsman, does he take the PRR or does he allow Skovidar or Leeson to take it? So Batsman has the DNH. I think there's great opportunities for him on the CNO. CNO is great company, and with the DNH, you're not super worried about losing out on Lancaster. It also looks unlikely that the B&O is going to be floating anytime soon. So CNO is an attractive company. It just matters. I guess it just depends on how scared he is of giving the Leeson player the PRR. PRR, if it floats for the least here, is guaranteed to be operating at least second. So not necessarily going to have an easy way of buying in its privates in the first operating round, which is usually a disaster. So it may be reasonable for Batsman just to say, hey, not my job to prevent the PRR float from Leeson. We'll see. He's going to take the NYNH. So NYNH is a decent company, but I think the CNO is basically strictly better at I think all stages of the game. So if you're not going to make the decision to take the PRR away from Leeson, I don't see why you wouldn't take the CNO, especially in a scenario where you have the DNH. I think that is really powerful and eliminates really any of the risk of the CNO par. Regardless, he takes the NYNH, he pars it for 67. This is going to force the PRR to par low. I think he needs to make sure he operates late in this operating order and is going to be at least going second if he pars at 67. Leeson, he is actually parring ahead of the NYNH. I think that's a mistake and should be able to easily float without any help. Skovidar, I think, again, he wants to operate late and have the best chance of buying in his private. So hopefully he will par for just 67. And he's been left the CNO, which is great. I don't think it's reasonable to take the NYC here. There's no guarantee that the NYNH is going to play friendly. CPR is terrible. Not terrible, but would not be a reasonable thing to start. B&M has the same problem as the NYC. Erie, really not a viable company until green. So I think CNO is the only option here. He could try to pressure the B&O, but Obi-Wan is guaranteed to be able to afford 5 shares, which is, almost always the case. So we're not going to be able to steal that presidency unless Obi-Wan misplays. Skovidar takes the CNO as expected, and he pars it very low. So Leeson missing an opportunity for an easy buy-in of his private potentially by parring the PRR too high. Obi-Wan does have the option to buy shares here, but I imagine we'll just see him sit on the revenue. He has $40 of revenue, so pretty reasonable to see how the track develops before spending his cash. And everybody will just be buying their own shares. So we see all these companies floated, and it looks like Obi-Wan has decided to start investing. Of all the companies to invest in, why would you buy the PRR? PRR is going to be guaranteed to have the least revenue, and it's the most expensive shares. So if he wants to sell out of this company, he can do that to hurt the CNA player, but he's going to hurt his own revenue in order to do that. And we'll see if he continues to invest in the PRR or if he just buys one share in each company. Looks like that's a strategy he's looking for. Skovidar, he's actually able to afford a share of the CNO or the NYNH as well. Obi-Wan maybe just passing now that he has one share in each company. And it looks like he does, so Batsman maintains priority. He's sitting on some cash. Could have bought a 7th share there, but it's going to be falling back anyways, and he probably just wanted to make sure he had priority. Likely to maintain priority, I'll note, because Obi-Wan has the most cash. So probably looking towards stock round 3 when he might be able to float a second company. PRR's first operation, he's heading towards Pittsburgh instead of Lancaster. And he buys just a single 2 train. May see us stall until the B&O is able to float on these 2 trains. NYNH is going to be running towards the B&M. Does this mean he wants to buy 3 2 trains here? I think that's a huge mistake, but we'll see if that's what he wants to do. So he does. That makes it quite easy for the CNO player to buy in his privates. CNO has the D and H, oh, actually the M and H, so pretty lucrative buy-in, and he should be able to buy it in and then just start the B and M by selling down the CNO. So he's just going to buy a single two train. I would have played that more aggressively. I think that he could easily have bought in his privates and got a leap on the other players. This is good news for the PRR, I think. Nobody has bought in their privates, and he is going to be given the opportunity to buy them in the same operating round as the other players. This makes the higher par for him, um, a better decision because he's able to leave more cash in the company as a result, and his shares are going to be worth more when he sells them. Batsman, does he buy any shares here? He buys a CNO. CNO is going to be running for 70 most likely. And Skovidar, Obi-Wan, is he buying shares? So probably should buy shares, but is going to open himself up to a dump potentially if he's not careful. He's passing, so Batsman has lost priority, and Leeson will be able to buy in his private and have priority into the next stock round. That is a pretty strong position for him. PRR, does he lay towards Lancaster now? And going to run his single train for 30 bucks and probably buying in his private. No, he's just going to pass. So players are playing quite conservatively. They may be waiting for the B&O to buy that last two train, which I think is probably a mistake for basically everyone. You're letting the NYNH run for longer than it should, and you're also missing out on your choice of a par, specifically the PRR player, right? He has priority, could have taken a company of his choosing, and is now not going to have the liquidity to do it. More importantly, this leaves the CNO the option of still buying in his private and being the only player to do so, and the PRR player will be buying in his private a operating round later as a result if that happens. NYNH laying in tokening Providence almost certainly, and he's going to have the highest revenue. But again, think about this. Paying out for 110 compared to a payout of 70 with the CNO, is that $40 really worth throwing away a token, which is going to be worthless in the late game, and then also opening up the privates for the other players and just depleting your treasury so severely? I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Providence strategy for the NYNH. I think it's probably a little bit more viable than the Washington strategy for the B&O, but still not great. CNO linking up with Chicago as expected, running a single train. I think that I would be tempted to withhold here, get yourself further into yellow when you sell, and then also you're going to be able to get most of this revenue when you buy in your private. So I would be withholding, but he may not be looking to buy in his private even, so we'll see. It looks like he finally does. Could have done this round earlier, but not the end of the world to do it now. So hopefully he will be able to sell some shares and then par his second company for a pretty reasonable price. Leeson buying an NYNH, very reasonable. NYNH is going to be running pretty well. We won't be seeing the four trains come out before it operates, so reasonable to buy that. Unfortunately for Leeson, I think that Skovidar is going to be going last in priority, which is going to drag Leeson back as well. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, is probably pretty happy about this. He can sell out and float his B&O with still maintaining his priority. Skovidar, he sells and will be taking the B&M. So this is another downside of this NYNH strategy, is that you now make the B&M a viable company. B&M is a weaker company than the NYC. But if you're going to telegraph where you're laying your track, it's nice if you're able to secure the company that's synergistic with that. And unfortunately, Batsman's unable to do that. Obi-Wan probably selling out and floating the B&O here, I'd have to guess. Instead, going to buy Pang shares, and he's just tanking the shares a little bit more. Will risk losing priority, though, by doing that. Instead of just immediately floating the B&O, the B&M should be able to float first, and Obi-Wan might be going last in priority. So have to be aware of things like that. Is it really worth the minor change in the PRR's stock worth growth to do that? I don't know. Batsman buying the cheaper PRR shares. Leeson, he's just going to be passing. Skovidar continuing to float probably. Obi-Wan, is he just going to float his B&O now? He's just going to trash everybody's shares, so he's going to be going last. in priority almost certainly. Batsman buying his last share, and he's just happy to be operating after Obi-Wan. He's just snapping up the cheap shares that Obi-Wan is putting in the market. And he's also going to be getting priority as a gift from Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan buying an NYNH. I assume we'll see him sell this as well. Yeah, so just short-sighted play, I would say. Skolvadar nearly floated. One more share to buy. Obi-Wan, is he going to trash Skolvadar shares as well? He's actually floating the CPR. So by doing this, he's going to get a company that operates, and he could use this as a suitcase because he has the Champagne and St. Lawrence. This preserves the capital or the private revenue of the B&O. But what is going to end up happening here is that probably Batsman, who has priority, will take the B&O from him and force him to run the CPR. He can't defend both of these presidencies. So this is an error. Skolvadar floats the B&M. Obi-Wan going to be trashing shares, just being spiteful. This doesn't really help anyone. And what is Obi-Wan doing now? He is going to continue to float the CPR. All right, so he has a worse company and will be losing the B&O, which is still a great company as a result, probably. Batsman with priority, CPR first to operate. He's going to lay the $80 track. Still has the option of treating this as a suitcase, but is going to be forced to run it, whether or not he likes it, because he's going to lose the B&O, I think. He buys a bunch of 3 trains, and he's putting pressure on the players with the 2 trains. I think specifically the NYNH is in pretty deep trouble as a result. Not going to be hard for these other players to buy into the 4s. PRR is going to certainly do that if given the opportunity. Providence upgraded and not tokened. I think that's the right move. He's going to shuffle trains from the C&O. C&O will be able to afford a 4 train as well now. And the 2 train that he actually buys a 3 train from the C&O. So C&O is a little bit at risk of falling back. I think it'd be safer to buy the 2 train over if you're just looking to shuffle cash around. But maybe he's hoping to stall and not allow the 2s to rust. Is Skolvadar invested in the NYNH? He's not, so a little bit confused by that. This means that PRR will not be able to rust the NYNH trains. Laying Lancaster tokens it immediately, and he's running for 40. He buys a 3, and I think we will be seeing the 2s survive here. C&O should get the last 3, and then the NYNH can pick up the 4, which is going to make it very hard for Batsman to buy in his privates. So maybe he will not be the player to get the B&O, and it'll be Leeson when he buys in his private. All I know is that Obi-Wan is not going to be maintaining control of the B&O. C&O laying the number 2, going to be linking up with Pittsburgh and probably getting that token in Lancaster would be my guess. He runs for 110 and he pays. Buys the last 3, doesn't have the money for the 4, so the NYNH is going to have to pick it up here. I think the NYNH player has to full withhold both operating rounds. Not the end of the world for him. He's going to remain in yellow, and he's going to be able to get 100% of that revenue when he buys in his privates after he buys the 4. He pays it out. Again, I think better move is to withhold. He has expensive privates that he's looking to buy in. And probably is going to be resting his own 2 trains here. Should do that. Otherwise, we'll be falling back trainless. Okay. I think the players could have played that operating round better than they did. And this, I think, puts Leeson in a pretty good position for the private buy-in, and then picking up the PRR and B&O, which has pretty nice synergy. Will he be able to, if he picks up the B&O, ensure that it gets the token on Lancaster? He should be able to. So B&O is going to be operating ahead of the C&O, almost certainly. And if the PRR player lays the tight turn on h14, B&O can then upgrade its home and get into Lancaster, I believe. Well, no, even with that, the wrong move, well, the move that guarantees the B&O doesn't get the token is if Lancaster is upgraded by the PRR here. So I think that's the thing he should not do. Let's see. He is going to buy in his private, and does he just lay Philadelphia here? That's fine to do too. Looks like it. He leaves the options open for both the PRR and the B&O to get into New York, and probably wise to do so as he's my favorite to be starting the B&O. Running for 80, pays it out. C&O linking up with Pittsburgh. Not able to token in Lancaster, and I think he's still very likely to get that token though. Leeson could use his capital to be a bludgeon and try and force the C&O down, but he's probably going to be ledged, so not going to be able to manipulate that operating order. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that the B&O is going to be able to guarantee he gets that Lancaster token. NYNH doesn't have cash for the upgrade, no viable track really. I'm going to be running his 4 train. He could upgrade Boston, I take that back. That will improve his run. I would really like to see him withhold last operating round. I think that's going to come back to bite him. He is upgrading Boston, and he pays out for 100. Yep. So it doesn't have cash to buy in his privates, really. CPR with 2 trains, only going to be able to run one of them. Actually, that's not true. We'll have to token in Ottawa to run 2 of them. And maybe forced to do that because he's not going to have much revenue otherwise. So he's able to buy in his private and lay the DIT to get his second run. We'll save his token, it looks like. He pays out for 120. And B&M's operation could upgrade New York here and maybe looking to get 2 runs into New York on F18. Should be able to do that uncontested, which would be pretty good for him. Paying out 90. So this stock round is very important. I think Leeson should be secure in getting the B&O here. Batsman, by selling the C&O, would have close to $400. Could also sell the PRR. So actually, Batsman probably can end up with the B&O if he wants it. And he's selling quite heavily out of the NYNH as well. I don't know that that was necessary. Is he just going to look to max par another company? If he pars the NYC, I'm a little bit worried that the track is going to be contested by the B&M. The NYC and NYNH is a great pair to have, but he laid the track that is not very helpful for the NYC. So let's see. He does take the NYC. Okay. Well, Leeson's happy about that. He's probably fine to take the B&O. Selling his own PRR. Does he also sell the NYNH? He can't. Batsman has filled the market. And Leeson is going to be buying CPR. So maybe he's looking to reduce the liquidity available to Obi-Wan, make it harder for him to defend the B&O. I think that's probably going to be necessary. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. The risk here is that if he were to start investing in the B&O right now, Obi-Wan could sell basically just 1 share in the CPR and have enough cash to get 5 shares in the B&O. If Leeson trashes the CPR high enough, he's going to make that a lot harder. He's going to have to trash it 4 times to get it to 60, and that's actually still enough cash to defend. So maybe Obi-Wan will be able to defend the presidency of the B&O. Well, I guess I missed that. I was expecting him to lose that presidency. Skovidar, he is buying an NYNH, and he sells a B&M. Obi-Wan, he is selling the CPR, so I guess he's going to be going to float that B&O. Just buying paying shares for now. Needs to be a little bit careful that he doesn't lock up revenue and leave himself unable to defend the B&O. For instance, if Leeson were to sell the NYNH, Obi-Wan would be unable to sell the share that he just bought, and he's going to have to sell more heavily out of the CPR. Leeson has a harder time tanking the CPR's value because he's going to be taking $4 net worth hit every share he buys out of the IPO, but probably still worth it to do that if it gets him the B&O. We'll see. Obi-Wan needs to be careful here. He is going to just buy and sell the NYNH for a single dollar of net worth. Definitely not worth losing tempo in the stock round for that. Batsman, he's continuing to float. Leeson, he is buying CPR. I think that we'll see him trying to lock up the liquidity of Obi-Wan, but it's going to be very hard for him to do that. So he sells prematurely. Not going to be able to accomplish that goal if that was indeed his goal. Skolvadar, buying in the NYH, maybe looking to take the presidency. He's safe from a dump as it stands right now. Skolvadar is running the CNO and the B&M, so picking up a third company is a liability going into permanent trains, but it gives him a ton of map control if he's able to survive the train rush. Obi-Wan, he's going to buy the CNO now. Is he still looking to trash? This company's ledge, so he's, I guess, genuinely interested in owning shares in this company. And NYC continuing to float. Leeson, he's going to now pressure for the presidency. Obi-Wan, this is defendable, and we'll see if he decides to do that. It is going to force Obi-Wan to sell paying shares and invest in his own B&O and rust his private. So I think someone has to do this, but unfortunately, Leeson is not going to be able to guarantee that he gets the presidency. Skovadar, he's going to buy paying NYNH, is dumpable now, and he will have to sell a share in one of his other companies, making the presidency vulnerable to take that. But yeah, I guess he's hoping that Batsman will just dump it on him. I don't know that Batsman needs to do that. He can force Skolvadar to sell a paying share to buy this company from him. Obi-Wan, he is selling the CNO, probably looking to just defend the B&O at this point. Actually going to buy a B&M. So he's just buying and selling shares that lose him a bunch of tempo in the stock round and do not even affect the stock price. I don't really understand what he's hoping to accomplish here. Is at risk of losing the B&O if he's not careful. So he then sells the B&M and still has the ability to protect the presidency, but just confused what he's doing. Batsman, very close to floating the NYC. Leeson buying another B&O. Skolvadar probably passing here. Obi-Wan going to be forced to buy his own B&O, I think, and will. So I suspect we'll see Leeson force him up to 5 shares and then taking his net worth. Batsman has floated. Leeson buying another B&O. Skovadar passing. Obi-Wan buying a B&O. Leeson actually passing now. A little bit confused by that. Obi-Wan buying a paying NYC. So he's probably going to trash this and then buy another B&O. Leeson missed an opportunity to buy a share, but now is back on the original goal. And actually, Obi-Wan dumps the B&O. Oh boy. So he's going to be running the Erie, it looks like. CPR and Erie do have some synergy up through Hamilton and Toronto, but two weaker companies, I would say, in terms of map presence. I would much prefer to have the B&O than the Erie. Even if the B&O is token out of Lancaster, you can still try and run west into Pittsburgh, and with the lay of Philadelphia and Trenton, potential for a good track for the B&O still. Very strange decision. Yeah, you hurt Leeson's net worth for now, but the game is very early. The net worth doesn't really matter. Obi-Wan, is he going to be looking to float the Erie? Yeah. Okay, so he gives the B&O to Leeson for a discount. Leeson only has to invest 4 shares and gets a $1,000 treasury and has a bunch of shares in the market that will be paying into the company. Expect we'll just be seeing Obi-Wan floating the Erie. I don't know that Leeson is motivated to trash the shares. Probably wants the NYC and the Erie to buy up these 4 trains and then has the B&O have a great chance of buying a 4 and a 5. Looks like Leeson's going to return the favor. Still, Erie's going to be operating before the B&O, so not the end of the world there. And Leeson probably buying paying shares, does pick up a B&M. Obi-Wan continuing to float the Erie, last share for Leeson, I imagine, and he will pick up another B&M. This is dumpable, so it needs to be a little bit careful, but it has permanent train money and pretty good tracks, so relatively low risk. Obi-Wan, and he actually trashes it into yellow. I was not expecting that. Needs to be worried that he's going to lose priority. He would be going second in priority if Obi-Wan went last, but if he buys another share, that may not be the case. Obi-Wan floats the Erie, has money for another share, but may be interesting going second in priority if Leeson buys a share here. Leeson does buy a share, his own B&O market share, so Obi-Wan may want to just pass here, sit on $100, and get second in priority. He will buy paying share, buys it from the PRR, and this will leave Batsman with priority potentially. Skolvadar, though, out of left field, going to sell out of the NYNH, probably realizing that's a risky hold. Batsman would have priority on him, and this is a dumpable company, so this is going to give Obi-Wan priority potentially. Skolvadar could have done this a while ago and maintained his place in priority. Surprised that he waited to the last second. Maybe he was expecting Leeson to end up with the last action giving him priority into the next stock round and making the NYNH a safe investment, but didn't work out for him. He's going to buy an NYC, not a paying company, and he just trashes it. So he's doing a little bit of turn order manipulation potentially. NYC still going to be operating first though, so that doesn't change anything for the first operation. Does potentially change the calculus into the OR 3.1 though, 3.2 or 4.2. Obi-Wan passing. Imagine everybody passing besides Skolvadar. He's going to buy an Erie. Does he trash this as well? He does. This means it operates after the B&O, so that's kind of bad news for Leeson, I would say. Both of these companies are still operating ahead of the PRR. Skolvadar buying a B&O. Is he going to trash this as well? Leeson probably hopes he would. I think that players sometimes just get in a mindset that they're just going to trash everybody's shares, and they do that for the sake of doing it, not really for a greater purpose of manipulating share and order or seeing where the permanent trains end up. I think that's a bad way to play, but maybe what we're seeing here. Skolvadar still has cash. CNO still going to be operating late in the operating order, relatively speaking. B&O operating after it, though, maybe makes it likely that the CNO can pick up a 5 train, but it's going to be lacking the cash to do so without shuffling trains. So I don't know that that's going to matter. Skolvadar buying a PRR. Is he looking just now for paying shares, or is he still in trashing mode? Looks like he is probably just going to be content to buy some paying shares now. Actually, surprisingly, does sell the PRR. That again doesn't change it doesn't change operating order, doesn't change the price of the company, so just a wasted action. And he'll buy a CPR, could trash this. CPR has 2 trains, probably would be happy to be in yellow, but would be operating last if this was sold. And he'll just pass. So a lot of just really kind of head-scratching play in that stock round. Hard to predict how these players are going to react. B&M, the NYC is going to be operating before the B&M, but he has to lay his home tile, and the B&M is going to be able to take F18 from him. So I don't know. Well, hard to say. Batsman can guarantee the New York Central has a run into NY by upgrading F18 with a gentle curve after the sharp curve has been laid. May also make sense to just lay towards E21 and get the double crossing gentle curves into Providence. He's not going to be tokened out of New York most likely, but could look to optimize his run. We'll see what he wants to do. I guess if he lays towards E21, does have to worry about the B&M tokening in Providence. But instead we'll be just heading towards New York. Buying a 4 train and going to sit on the rest of his cash. He is able to buy in his private. He probably needed to do that because the five trains are not far away. He needs to make sure that he doesn't lose the ability to bind his privates. Erie does have a green track available to it and is going to be laying towards Hamilton and Toronto. So probably just looking to immediately start cooperating with the CPR, but have to realize there's only two of these double O greens. So not going to be laying Hamilton and Toronto until brown at least. And this actually ensures that the Erie's not going to have a run. That may be intentional though. He may look to suitcase this until the five trains are available. He is going to shuffle money into the CPR. CPR now has permanent train money, and he doesn't buy any other trains. So he's just going to lose a run on this three train as a result. Yeah, I don't know if that's worthwhile. PRR, he is running the B&O, could look to lay friendly track for it, but unfortunately the C&O is going to be operating in between. So no guarantee that he gets that token on Lancaster. In fact, basically guaranteed he does not get the token on Lancaster. Maybe this is why Skolvadar was trashing shares at the end to ensure that the C&O operated before the B&O, in which case very reasonable. He does upgrade Lancaster. This gives the C&O player the ability to token and then still lay Reading and Allentown, which, to be honest, doesn't hurt the PRR player. As a C&O player, you may be tempted to upgrade or token Philadelphia, and I think that's a mistake here. Unless you lay Reading and Allentown so it doesn't run towards New York and then token Philadelphia, in which case that could be strong. But you do run your risk of being tokened at Lancaster or Pittsburgh and having your run cut. So still probably not the right play. Probably the Lancaster token is the where you need to go. He pays out for 90. C&O, probably laying Reading and Allentown, does, gets into New York as a result, and tokens Lancaster. Bad news for the B&O, but not the end of the world. NYNH, he is, I guess, looking to get a run from New York to Boston and bypass that DIT. This also hurts the NYC players' chances of getting into Providence from the E21 tile, but it doesn't look like he was heading there anyways. Paying out for 130. B&O's first operation. So this is an interesting question. Do you head east directly towards Atlantic City and into Philadelphia, or do you head upgrade your home tile and look to get into H14? You can guarantee that you get there because you control the PRR as well. So with an upgrade of your home and H14, you could look to token the C&O out of Pittsburgh. There's probably not any urgency to get into Philadelphia other than just having a little bit of a better run. So I think that if I was playing the B&O, I'd probably upgrade my home here. He will pay the $80, head to Philadelphia. Again, very reasonable to do that. Just maybe I would have done something different. I do not think it's worth tokening on Philadelphia here. I think that would be a big mistake. And he avoids that. Probably picking up a 4. He does. And looks like we will be set up for poison 4 here. CPR heading over to Hamilton, Toronto, but again, not going to be able to do anything with that track for a while. Running a 3 train for 70, and he pays it out. B&M going to be actually not laying directly into New York. He will be taking advantage of the Reading and Allentown track and looking to eventually head down into Baltimore probably. This also gives them the ability to mess with the southern companies and prevent them from getting easy access into New York, depending on how the brown tiles break. So, pretty interesting. The NYC is run by a different player. He is running the NYNH. So this also prevents the NYC from easily getting into New York in the next operating round. Could lay that double crossing gentle that we talked about on E21, but not an ideal lay for him. B&M running for 90, and he pays it out. Does have permanent train money. So I think we'll be seeing a stall on this 4 train. And who is this benefiting? This income is going to be inaccurate as a bunch of companies didn't run. But current share leader is Skolvadar. He has the B&M, which is a paying company, and the C&O, which is a paying company. So probably him. It's definitely not going to be good for Obi-Wan. He has the CPR, which is running for nothing, and the Erie, which literally is running for nothing. Batsman running the NYNH and the NYC. NYC is not going to have a good run. And Leeson has the BNO and the PRR. So probably Skolvadar is happy for the status quo to continue and just continue running while other players dance around this 4. Batsman with the NYNH or NYC just has a run into a dit. That's really unfortunate for him. And he's going to pay out for 40 or 30. PRR, does he look to H14 to help out the BNO? He does. So could token in Pittsburgh here and put a lot of pressure on the CNO. The only issue with that is that the BNO is not going to be able to upgrade Pittsburgh for that token. So may want to hold on to your token for now and leave that open. If you token with a PRR, the CNO can drop a token there and really kill the BNO. So probably not the right move to token just yet, but maybe I'll pick that up after the BNO operates. Going to sit on his token and he pays out. CNO, not a whole lot of interesting track. Maybe just upgrades Pittsburgh because he'll be running there, and he does. He does secure the token, so definitely the right move there. He has secured his late game run, and now the PRR and the BNO are both very unlikely to token in Pittsburgh because they'll be cutting their own run. None of the other companies are in a position to compete for that token, so very safe for them to leave that hole in Pittsburgh. I think both these players have made the great moves in this situation, with the exception perhaps of the B&O could have upgraded his home, but it's going to be the same. He's still going to be able to run west with an upgrade, so it probably didn't matter that much actually. NYNH, he now upgrades New York City. He is doing Skolvadar's work for him in some sense. Skolvadar, he only has a 3, so he's going to have to drop a token to hit New York and may be reluctant to do that. Unfortunate for the NYNH player that is NYC is not going to be able to run into New York and take advantage of that. He pays out 150. CPR, still heading to Hamilton and Toronto. I wonder if he realizes that he can't do anything here until the brown trains come out. Unclear. Paying for 70. B&M, he is passing and just running his $90 train. Erie has no options, maybe now realizing that he's made a mistake, or maybe intentional, unclear. B&O does link up with his home tile and will be running a 4 train for 130 and paying it out. So that will bring us into stock round 5. And let's see here. We said that I think that Skovadar was the one to benefit from a stall, and he is leading in revenue, but actually, no, he's not. Leeson is leading in revenue. But Skolvadar is technically the leader in net worth. He has a little bit less cash than Batsman, and he is share leader, so probably can extend his lead by just buying paying shares and hoping the other players don't push the trains. He may be regretting that he didn't try and take this presidency of the NYNH since the game is stalled. Would allow him to just withhold on one of his companies and afford 3 permanent trains. Obi-Wan, he's buying a B&O. He, of course, lost his presidency in the last stock round. Batsman, and he's just trashing it. Oh boy, he really likes doing this. Batsman, he is buying a B&O. Leeson, buying an NYC. NYC has pretty bad track for right now. I'm surprised that he would prioritize that. There are probably better paying shares. Even for instance, the CNO, cheaper and has better revenue. Skovadar, he is buying his own B&M. He buys it from the market. Obi-Wan, buying an NYNH and not trashing it for once. Batsman, he will buy B&M and he clears the market. Leeson, buying an Erie, that's a mistake. Probably just going to trash the share. I don't imagine you want to sit on this. It's not going to have any revenue. And he does. Puts it in yellow, though, so that's good for Obi-Wan in some sense. Skolvadar, buying a B&M. Obi-Wan, probably last share here. He will buy a CNO. Batsman has a couple shares left to buy. He's going to tank the Erie even further. Again, it's tempting to hurt players' net worth, but putting them deep in yellow is going to benefit them in the long term. Leeson, buying CPR. Batsman may sit on this share, and it's not unreasonable. It's going to be yellow, but he's not anywhere near his cert limit. So buying non-paying shares this early in the game probably not worthwhile. Skolvadar, Leeson is trashing CPR. Skolvadar is buying a PRR. In Obi-Wan passing, Batsman still has shares to buy, but is passing, it looks like. PRR being bought from the IPO for a $9 benefit. And Leeson, last share, he'll buy in the CNO. Skovadar passing, can't afford any shares, neither can Obi-Wan. Batsman, last share, will buy a CPR. And I guess this will leave Leeson with priority. Okay, so we'll see who wants to fall on this last 4 train. NYC, he is upgrading his home tile, will be running for just $10 more, still a really pathetic run, and he pays out. Leeson, PRR, doesn't have a whole lot of interesting track at this point in the game. Could look to upgrade H8 to open up Chicago in the late game, but it didn't take him a long time to get there. Alternatively, could head north to Dunkirk and look to open up those double O's. Again, those are going to be locked down until Brown, though. Looks like that it looks like he's heading north. Could be heading towards Dunkirk or eventually towards Albany. And we'll see how he's looking to develop this. He's running for 100 and he pays that out. Skovadar running the CNO. Again, kind of limited track options. He is eager to cooperate though with the PRR and also heads north and pays out as well. NYNH, no track that he can lay, and he will just be running and paying for 150. Batsman has pretty good revenue, at least for running 1-3 train, but unfortunately only owns 30% of the company. Does have 4 market shares, so not the end of the world for him. We'll just kind of be inching towards permanent train money with this. His brother in arms, the B&M, also no track, or no track that's reasonable to lay, really, and will be just paying out 90, it looks like. CPR could head towards maritime provinces, but probably will not be running that. And does, paying out for 70. And he buys the Poison 4. This opens up the 5s for Leeson. Leeson has permanent train money and has a pretty healthy PRR. Looking at operating order, the PRR and the NYC will be next to operate in the operating round. Erie will also be able to pick up a 5, so that's why he's buying the 4, because he will ensure himself a 5. But he's not going to be able to pick up a second permanent train at least until the 6s, and probably be falling on a D in the CPR. That is a very dangerous situation for him. So should be seeing the Erie, the NYC, and the B&O, no, the B&M picking up the 5 trains here as a result. All right, well, someone had to do it. I don't know if he planned this right or not. B&O, for some reason I thought he had already operated, so he will pick up the first 5. Great news for him. And this leaves the PRR player to determine how Philadelphia gets upgraded, it looks like. He's going to link up with Rochester. Does he token there? He does. Unusual to see the B&O get a token in Rochester. And I don't know that it's the most important token in this game. They also have no competition from really anyone for that, so I probably would have sat on that token. Not unreasonable to take it, but if in the setting of no competition, why rush? He's running for 130, and he withholds, actually. A little bit surprised by that as well. He's going to pick up a 5, and we are now in brown. So this allows Erie to upgrade its home token and then open up Hamilton, Toronto, which is what he does. Interestingly, he lays it. Did he have to lay it that way? No, he could have laid it straight and then looked to head into Pittsburgh. No guarantee he'd get there, but this one is pretty bad. He's tokened out at Rochester. No guarantee he can get into E13. So I guess maybe he's hoping to run into Hamilton and Toronto twice. I don't know. That is weird. He buys a 5. PRR not going to have money or the ability to withhold for a 5, so I think the NYC ends up with the last 5. Yeah. PRR lays Philadelphia and Trenton, and he actually gives the easy run to the B&O. So this is nice actually because he has tokens in both of his companies. So he can double token in New York and prevent the C&O player from running through New York into Philadelphia basically. Does need to be a little bit careful that the C&O doesn't drop a tight curve here and bypass New York and head in from the south, um, which wouldn't be unreasonable to do. That tile is available, and there's no way that the PRR can prevent it. So the C&O player is not totally blocked here. PR is going to pass tokens and just wait to see how this track develops before he leaves it. He pays out. NYC should probably be upgrading F18 for a run into New York. And instead is going to upgrade for a run through Providence. That's fine. Is he going to be able to guarantee that this also gets upgraded? He can with the NYNH, so he's fine. We'll be able to get all the runs into New York that he's been desiring for the last couple of operating rounds. Running for 150, and this is actually pretty painful for the B&M, who has now unfortunately lost access to New York at least until F18 is upgraded. So maybe Batsman is not going to lay the double crossing track, the 43 there, because that would open it back up for the B&M player. We'll see. C&O, he has no ability to pick up a permanent train here. Again, I do think he needs to look towards I-17. We'll see if he picks up on that. Instead, going to upgrade Lancaster. So B&O is free to lay a bad track for the C&O on I-17, and then you can both token in New York, I think, and have very good runs and hurt the C&O's ability to run New York efficiently. He's going to withhold, but still doesn't have permanent train money. NYNH, he is upgrading Boston, so going to leave F18 open for the B&M player. Well, I don't know. I think I would have played that a little bit differently and prevented the B&M from getting to F18, but we'll see. B&M now operating does lay that expected tile and will have close to permanent train money, but is going to have to withhold twice, it looks like, to pick up a 6. And he is $16 short. If the 6s come out early, I think he would be in trouble. The CPR is not going to be able to pick it up. So maybe he could secure both 6s, but he would have to heavily out of pocket the second 6. Nobody else is really in it. Well, the B&O could pick it up too. So needs to be a little bit careful. He's staring down the D trains and possibly a bankruptcy if he isn't careful. CPR running 2 non-permanent trains can finally upgrade Hamilton, but it's going to need this cash for permanent trains in the near future. So kind of unfortunate that it cost him $80 to do it. B&O, does he withhold for a 6 here? If Leeson picks up the 6, he'll have 2 permanent trains, and he'll have put Skovidar into bankruptcy probably, or at least very close. He'll be eliminated from the game mostly. And the only problem here is that a withhold for Leeson may give Batsman the game if someone goes bankrupt. So it's questionable. I think you probably do withhold here. Upgrading B&O, or the Baltimore. Interesting that he doesn't lock down I-17. Maybe I'm missing something there, but that would be my priority. And he's going to run for 180. If he withholds, he'll easily afford a 6. He withholds, so we will see the 6 come out. And this is going to be very bad news for Skovidar. He will be getting 1/6 guaranteed, barring shenanigans from Obi-Wan, where he were to buy the CPR train over. But Skovidar's C&O operates before the CPR, so yeah, he should be guaranteed to get a 6. Erie, he upgrades Hamilton and Toronto, is going to be able to make a nice little loop here and run pretty well with this 5 train in the next operating round. Paying for 100. and we are into the next stock round. So there's going to be an opportunity for some stock manipulation here, and I think that Skovidar needs to make sure that he can pick up at least one six train here, or else he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Um, Unfortunately for him, his C&O is able to be trashed to 68. So, well, nobody else is really urgently looking to pick up a six, or at least not really in a good position to do it. CPR didn't shuffle trains, so cannot emergency buy the six before the C&O runs, regardless of the C&O being trashed. So Skovidar should be able to pick up a six and then have to emergency buy a D train. He has enough liquidity and company cash that he probably will not be going bankrupt. And then Obi-Wan also has some company cash, probably will not go bankrupt when he buys a D with the CPR. So probably not going to be a bankruptcy game. Leeson buying the yellow shares. B&O has two trains, but I don't think we'll see that four train run. Probably someone picks up a D first. Um, yeah, probably Skovidar will have to buy the D first. Skovidar, man of the hour, selling out of the C&O. Does have a fair amount of cash in that company, but realizing that he's going to need paying shares to operate first to minimize the pain of these out-of-pocket purchases. So needs to buy companies early in operating order. NYC is a great choice. Obi-Wan, he's buying the PRR. And Batsman buying his own NYNH. This is also a company without a permanent train, so unclear why he's buying the market shares rather than just leaving them to pay. Leeson, probably one of the last shares he's going to be able to afford, picks up a PRR. PRR should be floating up as a result. Skovidar, probably again investing in early operating companies. Buying another NYC. Obi-Wan, buying the NYC, which is also going to be floating again. This is nice for Skovidar for when he sells these shares. He will have an extra $10 of revenue in each of them. And unless Obi-Wan does that and tanks them, but that's not the end of the world. Skovidar can still snap up that $90 share and float it up. Batsman, he is going to pick an NYNH. Leeson, last share for him will be a CPR. Skovidar probably buying the NYC again. He does. So again, kind of a pointless action from Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan buying a B&M. Is he just going to be trashing shares again this operating round? Potentially. And Batsman is now maxed on the NYNH. He's depleted his own market and is going to be probably forced to withhold on this NYNH anyways, so don't like the decision to invest in that company. Skovidar, he is buying B&O. A little bit of a risky purchase there. He's depleting his net worth, which he's going to very, very shortly need for permanent trains, and the B&O is not going to run before he needs to buy his D. So basically is just wasting money with his share. CPR being bought by Obi-Wan, Batsman probably passing, Skovidar buying a CPR, which is a paying share that should operate before his other companies. Everybody else passing. This leaves Obi-Wan with priority, I believe. Yes. And we'll see how players want to navigate these impending D trains. PRR should just be paying here, and he's going to be looking to bypass the C&O in Cleveland. Again, I'm surprised to see I-17 laying unupgraded. Paying for 220, and he does pay that out. NYC going to have a pretty good run. 2 runs into New York. Probably we'll see a New York upgrade here, which he does. This does allow the B&M to token there, but the B&M would have been able to do that anyways. And he's going to want to hold as much cash as he can for these permanent trains, I imagine. So he is paying out for 390. He actually withholds for 390. Why is that? He does need a permanent train in the NYNH. Okay, so probably we'll shuffle the 5 out of the NYC and then buy a permanent train with the NYC. He is upgrading Albany, runs for 210 with holds, and then shuffles out of the NYC, I imagine. Yes. CPR, upgrading Hamilton, completing that loop. We'll have to token if he wants to take advantage of it, but that would kill the Erie, so we won't be seeing that. He actually tokens in Ottawa, so he gets a little bit closer and is able to hit both of those 50 value cities. Probably withholding here. He pays out, so that's good news for Skolvadar. That is one risk that Skolvadar took, is that these other players could withhold as the NYC did, in which case investing your cash is actually worse than just sitting on it. So bad news for him. Skolvadar going to be on the hook for a 6 train here, and he is upgrading Pittsburgh, so all the brown normal cities have been used, and he has to sell the NYC. So again, very unfortunate for him that Batsman is withholding, because he was really hoping to get some revenue and a share accumulation by investing his money there. This hurts him quite a bit, I think. He does afford the 6 and then immediately has to turn around and buy D. With those withholds, does that mean he goes bankrupt? No, not it. No, but he is going to be nearly eliminated from the game. He's going to have to sell basically everything here to afford this. He does place the token, so that's another $40 that he's going to have to find by selling shares. And he also sells heavily out of the B&M immediately. So this presidency is vulnerable. Um, we will see if the IPO share becomes relevant here. Probably won't. He's also going last in priority, so he's going to lose control of the B&M almost certainly. Um, he can't pay out to bring it out of Brown, but he's going to be so poor, I don't think he can even defend the presidency, even if the other players aren't able to steal it from him with a mass buy of Brown shares. And the 4 trains have now rusted. B&O did have that 4 train, but it's not going to be able to run it. Skolvadar is going to be sitting on 8 shares still, and will have to try his best to defend that B&M. Erie going to have a better run, much better run now that it can hit all these 00 cities, and looks to bypass Rochester, but there's at least 3 companies that are going to be trying to prevent this, and Leeson is going to be operating right away and has the option of doing that. So he runs for 100, 180, and he pays B&O. He does block the Erie's ambitions, and he's going to be running his 6 for 290. Very good. And he pays that. So at the end of that operating round, just taking note of the game state, it looks like Leeson is ahead, and he is tied for share lead. He, I think, is on the hook for a permanent train, though, isn't he? No, he's not. Batsman, on the other hand, is, and he was his closest competitor, it looks like. So Leeson in a very strong position now. Batsman not going to have to sell shares, but not going to be running and going to lose a lot of net worth as a result. The bank, on the other hand, has $10,000 in it, so it's quite healthy. PRR, he is confirming that the Erie is dead in the east and running for 240, which he pays. CPR, trainless, going to be upgrading to allow Erie to get into Canadian West, but has to sell quite a few shares and is eliminated from the game. So we have 2 players that are going to be in distant last place, Obi-Wan and Skolvadar, and this game is going to come down to between Batsman and Leeson. I probably favor Leeson here. I think he has better long-term track potential. The fight over New York has led to a lot of tokens, and none of the companies are going to have really wonderful runs as a result. Definitely not runs worthy of a D. NYC falling back, already token out of Rochester, and also an E13 going to be going nowhere with this track. And he's going to shuffle a train. So instead of just out of pocketing the D, he's going to fall back on both of his companies, which is very bad for him. and he will sell a single share and pick up the D with the NYNH. NYNH has better tokens than the NYC, as it's not tokened out of New York, but very marginal benefit in the long term, and probably not worth falling back for. CNO running his new shiny new 6 train. He is finally going to take that track that I was worried he was going to take. So this kind of negates the strength of a double token in New York. And he's going to pay out for 290. B&O, he, I'm not sure. This track doesn't really help him. Maybe it helps, it doesn't help the PRR either. So not sure what he's accomplishing there. He's going to run a 6 for 290, and he actually withholds. He will stay in the yellow. And is he looking for a second permanent train? Unclear. I think it's Leeson's game to lose, so don't like to see him withholding necessarily. Um, it does keep him yellow, but he's going to have to withhold again to do it. He's going to have a ton of cash in the next stock round, so could snap up a bunch of cheap permanent or cheap shares and look to just win this game on share density if he stays yellow. Erie linking up with Canadian West and running for 220, but that's probably the best run he's going to have. B&M running a new D train, only owns 20% of the company, and he's going to be paying for 200. PRR, this is the last operating round of the set. He is continuing to block all these New York companies from ever heading anywhere worthwhile with upgrades, and he pays for 240. CPR running a D train, first run of the D train, does have a decent run, and is going to pay out for 260. NYNH, he is hoping to bypass F12, but that should be pretty easily preventable. Running for 250. CNO, does he immediately block those New York companies? He is instead going to link them up. That's surprising. He is running the B and M, but he doesn't have any tokens, and the New York Central does. So needs to be careful that he doesn't lay track for his opponent that he's not able to take advantage of. New York probably laying a tight DIT here, and then I assume he would want to leave a token on Buffalo, but doesn't have the cash to do it just yet. This opens up a token in Pittsburgh, which is bad news for the B&O and PRR player Leeson. So Leeson may need to token in Dunkirk to protect his runs. Does he have the ability to do so? He does with the B&O. So that may end up being what happens. B&M does have the cash for a token, but has already laid it in New York. Erie, upgrading Barry, just increasing his run by $10, and he pays that out, so we'll be leaving the yellow zone. B&O should be probably tokening in Dunkirk, and instead tokens in Pittsburgh. That's interesting. This cuts his PRR run unnecessarily and doesn't hurt the New York companies as much as it could have. A token in Dunkirk denies them a lot more revenue than a token in Pittsburgh does. Running for 290, and he pays out, leaving the yellow zone. B&M, last company to operate in this set, and he's running his D train, maybe looking to eventually bypass Pittsburgh, but that should definitely not be allowed with an upgrade on H18 or H8. He's paying for 270, pretty good run, and he will be leaving the OR with $430, so probably will be able to defend the presidency on one of his companies at least. And he actually anticipated the loss of a presidency, so is going to consolidate his trains in the B&M by buying them out of the CNO, and can just buy his B&M shares as a result. Will eventually buy his own CNO shares and then buy a train out of the B&M, but realized that he wasn't going to be able to defend both presidencies. Leeson by far the cash leader and also is the share leader, but he has basically no yellow shares, just one yellow share here. So he's going to be hitting the cert limit pretty early. Obi-Wan is buying a B&M. It is a yellow share, makes sense. Batsman, probably will see a rush on these yellow shares, would be my guess. Lee Sin also joining. Skolvadar has to defend. And we're looking at a heavily split presidency of the B&M. Lee Sin left to buy a non-B&M share will be picking up the CPR, also running a D train, also a potentially vulnerable presidency. Skolvadar going to buy the NYNH. Obi-Wan going to be forced to defend his CPR here, and he does. Does have money for one more share, so should be able to pick up 5 of them, but Lee Sin happy to pressure, it looks like. Batsman, he is buying a CNO. CNO is trainless, but will shortly have a train and has pretty good runs, so safe to buy 1 share. Lee Sin last year, does he pick up a CPR again? He will instead buy an Erie. Interesting. Not entirely sure there. Skolvadar buying the NYNH. Obi-Wan last year for him. He's going to defend his presence of the CPR. Batsman, he is buying a PRR. And Lee Sin, does he sell any shares here to just optimize the portfolio? He is selling a B&O, putting it in yellow. So I like this play. This opens him up, opens up his cert limit. Of course, it allows another player to buy a yellow share, but it helps him a whole lot more than that player. So he's going to pressure the presidency of the Erie. Obi-Wan cannot defend without selling shares, which he is able to do. But then that makes it so that Lee Sin can buy those shares instead. Well played to Lee Sin. I like that. Skovadar, he's going to buy the last share of the NYNH. That company will be floating up. And Obi-Wan selling a CNO, which is a potentially non-paying share, and should be buying an Erie here, but it's going to be hard for him to defend. He's going to have to sell some of these B&M shares potentially. Batsman also going to buy the Erie, so maybe trying to make it a little bit harder for Lee Sin to steal this presidency. If he buys enough shares, he's going to make it impossible for Lee Sin to take it over. Lee Sin buying. Oh, I missed that. So Lee Sin actually is able to just steal the presidency right here. I wasn't paying close enough attention. So that's really bad news for the entire table. This gives Lee Sin control, more map control, and also allows him to exceed his cert limit by another share once the B&O leaves yellow. Skobadar buying a B&O. He's buying that cheap share that was sold by Lee Sin. Obi-Wan just going to have to pass. So he actually dumps the Erie. Oh man, this puts a bunch of cheap yellow shares for the other players to buy, and Lee Sin's going to be happy to run 2 yellow companies. Buying the NYC instead. Batsman buying a cheap Erie. Lee Sin will be following suit, I'm sure. Skolvadar, he is buying a CPR. That company's floating up. And Obi-Wan buys his last share in the NYC. Batsman passing. Lee Sin is free to buy non-yellow shares and then buy up the rest of these Erie shares, I'm sure. So he's going to buy an Erie share for now. He's not under any competition for any shares at this point. And floats the NYC, can buy another Erie share if he wants it, which he does. And still has other shares he can buy. He could buy a well, I guess he's actually locked on the PRR and the B&O, so would be forced to buy a CNO, which honestly wouldn't be the end of the world. The company has $500. He can afford to out-of-pocket a train. He might end up with 4 presidencies. Not wrong to do that, I don't think. With 4 presidencies, this game's over. It's probably over already. He has basically $1,000 lead on his next closest player, has a 3-share lead, has great trains, great track. So I think Lee Sin is the clear winner here. But curious to see if he does decide to take that CNO. Looks like he's going to pressure for it at least. So Skovadar's selling paying shares to defend, and Lee Sin can still pressure. Or he could just pick up that. Actually, he cannot pick up the PRR, so that's a little bit bad for him. Well played to Skovadar to sell a share that Lee Sin can't buy. But he is going to pressure for the presidency of the CNO, as he should. And Skovadar now has basically all the shares he can afford, and Lee Sin's going to buy that last one probably. Yep. So very well played by Lee Sin there. I think he's far enough ahead that any actions he take will end up being the right actions. And he's actually not that far off of a permanent train for one of his companies if he wants to shuffle trains. He's going to be incentivized to withhold on one of his companies, um, maybe the B&O, um, to keep it yellow anyways. So he may withhold, then shuffle trains and buy a second or his first D train and run two permanent trains in one of his companies. We can kind of accelerate the playthrough at this point. I think this game has pretty much exhausted itself. PRR, just throwing away track on H14 and paying out. CPR, he is going to get a second run into Barry. I don't think that really improves his run very much, just $30. NYC running a 5 train and does not have money for a token. Maybe looking to bypass Pittsburgh still, but should be prevented. NYNH, he is pressuring that H8 tile still. Skolvadar has the opportunity to deny it, and actually I think that has already been denied with the H14. So it was incorrect for me to say Leeson is just throwing away tokens tile. He foresaw this pressure and eliminated it before it became relevant. NYNH does have a good run, 340, and C&O going to be forced to buy his own train out of the B&M probably. He actually, yes, so he buys a train out of the B&M. And does he look towards a second permanent train by withholding on the B&M? He does, 230. B&O, he also may be withholding here. He pays out, does he withhold on the Erie? His run is only 120. How is that possible? What did he run? He should have a better run than 120. So D10 and E11 and D14. So he's just running. Oh, I see. He was tokened by the CPR. That is unfortunate for him. But that's what he gets for stealing the presidency, I guess. Still, withholding, keeping it yellow. I guess he's paying. Still worthwhile to have the presidency. So looking at this, Leeson is exceeding his cert limit. We'll have to sell unless he starts withholding. He is far and away leading in revenue and in net worth. I think that this game, unfortunately, is going to go for 2 sets of operating rounds, including this one. So why don't we skip through just to see if there's anything interesting left in the game, and we may be able to just call the game here. So B&M does pick up a second permanent train. We kind of commented on that. I imagine that Skolvadar will be buying this train into the C&O and just letting the B&M run the less useful 6 train. Having 2 D trains in the C&O, he will have 2 routes into New York, so that is pretty good. And he can also run into Chicago. But he's been withholding on one of his companies to achieve this, and he actually has Skovadar is running for less than Leeson. Batsman is running for more than Leeson. As a result of running the NYNH D train, it looks like Leeson only unfortunately has 1 share there. And I think the reason this is Leeson's had to withhold on his companies to stay yellow. So Leeson still is the stock lead and is not going to have to withhold really anymore. So should be able to take this game still. $5,000 in the bank. Really no shares to buy. There are some shares to buy, but not enough to make any difference. Leeson's not going to be able to buy any of these PRR shares, so the other players in the game should buy the shares that he can buy, the Erie and the B&O, and then he won't be able to extend his stock lead. Let's just make sure they do that. B&O is sold, and someone is buying the PRR, so that's a mistake, but as long as Batsman buys the Erie, no harm, no foul, which he does. Leeson unable to buy any shares, and Skolvadar and Obi-Wan should be able to buy the last 2 shares in the game. So we'll pass into what should be the last operating round here. Market has a little over $6,000, but we have multiple D trains, no other D trains. Actually, 1 D train looks to be purchased by the B&O here, so that might extend the game, unfortunately. I don't think it's necessary for him to do this. I think he wins regardless. but it does make it harder for me to just pass through the operating rounds. Let's just see if he picks up a D train, and we will have a better idea of what people's revenue will be. So PRR potentially looking to bypass Pittsburgh and does have plenty of cash to make that happen. So we'll be running a little bit better in the future, it looks like. He's going to pay out for 240. CPR does have a D run, doesn't have cash for this upgrade here, would have to withhold to make it happen, and that's almost certainly not worth it. So he's going to pay out for 300. NYC doesn't have a whole lot of interesting track. Could look to head up towards the CPR's track, but also is going to have to withhold to do it, which again is probably not worthwhile. So he's paying for 200. NYNH also unable to lay that track and just going to be passing and paying out for 340. CNO running a D train. Is he going to be looking to run 2 D trains with this company? He's paying for 480. That's pretty strong. And he does buy a D train. So the CNO is going to be running 2 D trains, but he's so far behind Leeson. I think even with 2 D trains, and especially with him only running 10% more of the company than Leeson, that is not going to be enough to get him back in the game. B&O probably picking up a D train here. He is going to be heading down into an off board. He has been blocked by the CNO for getting into Chicago, it looks like. Running for 290. He pays that out, does leave the yellow zone of the market, and he buys a D. So unfortunately, I think that we'll be seeing yet another set of operating rounds. That's pretty painful. I think this game is already over. Erie has no valuable track and is going to be stuck running for 120, and he pays that out. B&M, he does have the money to lay into the CPR's track, which could open up runs for the other players. Even the CNO, I think, can get up there. So he's actually going to pass that, and he's going to run for 230 and pays it out. PRR, so let's look here. In terms of revenue, Leeson's leading by a fair amount. He has the net worth lead, and he just picked up a shiny new D train, I believe, running 2 permanent trains in the B&O. So I think his lead is secure. I don't think there's any track that is worth really paying attention to, especially if the B&M is not going to be laying up here. So I think they're just going to be running and paying trains. Let's skip this stock round or this operating round, and we will be in 8.3. The fact that there's not another skip here tells me that the bank probably does break, which is fortunate. So let's just run through this. Leeson still operating for more than everyone and has secured the win. So we can, I think, feel confident just to skip to the end of the game, actually. And Leeson, as expected, takes the game by a very convincing $2,000 lead. Well played to him. I think that this game was pretty sloppy on a lot of players' parts. Obi-Wan made some errors in the auction to start the game off, and then lost control of the B&O in favor of the Erie, and then didn't manage to keep control of that even. So really benefited Leeson, giving him 2 companies basically, the player that ultimately won the game. He also is the player that broke into the 5s and bought the Poison 4. I didn't analyze that in depth, but that may have been not in his best interest either. I think that the play from the Southern companies was generally pretty good. Their kind of tension in terms of upgrading Pittsburgh and Lancaster, and the only difference that I would have liked to see is a different upgrade of I-17 from Leeson to prevent the CNO from running through New York potentially, but it didn't end up altering the course of the game, so no harm, no foul there. The major theme of this game was a lot of unnecessary stock trashing. The players that engaged in it most, specifically Obi-Wan, ended up coming in last. So I think it really just highlights that you need to be thinking long term, taking actions with purpose, buying a market share to sell that market share the next turn, and not even change operating order is a wasted action. You're throwing away your potential for priority for no benefit at all. So need to watch that. A lot of the players were doing things like that. I think I criticized Skolvadar potentially for trashing some shares, missing that it maybe allowed his C&O to operate ahead of the B&O, for instance. So if you're going to be trashing shares with that in mind, very good play, very reasonable to do that. Um, but just trashing shares for no real purpose is a mistake. So well played to Leeson. This ended up being a little bit of a boring game at the end, but there was some interesting stuff in the mid game. So hopefully it will be useful to the viewers. Thanks for watching.